The people of Israel were slaves in Egypt. Day after day, under the burning sun, their backs bent low. The crack of the whip cut the air. Egyptian overseers shouted, "Work, more bricks." No delay. The sound of heavy stones slamming into place filled the air, mixed with groans, mixed with tears. Men stumbled under their loads. Women carried clay with weary arms. Even children knew the weight of slavery before they knew the joy of freedom. Egypt was strong. Pharaoh was ruthless. And hope seemed like dust, trampled beneath Egyptian sandals. But while the people cried, God listened. He had not forgotten them. Far from Egypt, in a desert wilderness, there lived a man who thought his story was over. Moses. Once he had walked the halls of Pharaoh's palace, a prince dressed in gold. But he had fled in shame, fearing Pharaoh's wrath, and now he was nothing more than a shepherd. Watching sheep on the slopes of Mount Horeb, his staff tapped against the rocks, his sandals stirred the dust, his thoughts lost in the silence of exile. And then he saw a bush burning. Fire danced across its branches, fierce and bright, but the bush was not consumed. Moses narrowed his eyes, blinked, stepped closer. Flames roared, but no ash fell, no smoke rose. And then his name, a voice deep and shaking the ground. Moses, Moses. His heart leaped to his throat. He whispered, "Here I am." The voice thundered again, "Do not come closer. Take off your sandals, for the place where you stand is holy ground." Trembling, Moses bent down, pulled the sandals from his feet, stood barefoot before the fire. And the voice said, "I am the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob." Moses covered his face with his hands. He dared not look. And then came the words that changed everything. "I have seen the misery of my people in Egypt. I have heard their cries. I know their suffering. I have come down to rescue them. So now go. I am sending you to Pharaoh. You will bring my people out of Egypt." Can you hear Moses' breath catching? He stammered. "Who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and bring the Israelites out?" But God answered, "I will be with you." Still Moses hesitated, panic rising. "What if they do not believe me? What if they do not listen?" God said, "What is that in your hand?" "A staff," Moses replied. "Throw it to the ground," God commanded. Moses threw it, and the staff writhed, twisting, hissing a snake. Moses leapt back in terror. "Reach out your hand and take it by the tail." His hand trembled, but he obeyed, and the snake became a staff once more. Then God commanded him to place his hand inside his cloak. When Moses pulled it out, it was white with disease, leprous. "Now put it back," said the Lord. He did, and his hand was restored, flesh whole again. Proof upon proof, sign upon sign. But still Moses protested, "Lord, I am not a man of words. I am slow of speech, slow of tongue." The fire burned brighter, and the voice roared, "Who gave man his mouth? Who makes him mute or deaf, seeing or blind? Is it not I, the Lord? Now go, I will be with your mouth, and teach you what to say." Yet Moses, weak in fear, pleaded, "Please, send someone else." The anger of God flashed, but he said, "Your brother Aaron will speak for you. I will be with both your mouths. Go." So Moses returned to Egypt, his staff in his hand, Aaron at his side. Into the golden palace they went, past the towering statues, past the guards with spears gleaming in the torchlight. Before Pharaoh himself, the ruler of the world, Moses raised his voice. "Thus says the Lord, the God of Israel, let my people go, that they may hold a feast to me in the wilderness." Pharaoh's lips curled into a sneer, his voice was cold. "Is the Lord that I should obey his voice and let Israel go? I do not know the Lord, and I will not let Israel go." Instead of freedom, Pharaoh struck harder. He barked, "No more straw for the Hebrews. Let them gather their own. But they must make the same number of bricks." And the whip cracked louder. The people groaned more bitterly than before. He turned on Moses, shouting, "You have made us hateful to Pharaoh. You have given him a sword to kill us." Moses cried to God, "Why have you sent me? Since I spoke to Pharaoh, things have only grown worse." And God answered, "Now you will see what I will do to Pharaoh. With a mighty hand he will let you go. With a mighty hand he will drive you out." And the battle began. Not Moses against Pharaoh, but the God of heaven against the gods of Egypt. Moses struck the Nile with his staff, and the river that gave Egypt life turned to blood. Fish floated belly up dead. The water reeked with stench. Egyptians dug along the banks for drinkable water. But Pharaoh's heart was stone. Then frogs came, croaking, leaping, covering the land. They filled kitchens, ovens, beds. Pharaoh begged, "Pray to your God to take them away, and I will let your people go." Moses prayed. The frogs died, piled in heaps across the land, and the land stank. Pharaoh's heart hardened again. Then gnats rose from the dust, swarming men and beasts. The magicians of Egypt gasped, "This is the finger of God." But Pharaoh would not yield. Then swarms of flies poured into the houses of Egypt, blackening the skies. But in the land of Goshen, where Israel lived, not a single fly buzzed. Pharaoh bargained, "Sacrifice to your God here in Egypt." Moses replied, "No. We must go 3 days into the wilderness." Pharaoh said, "Go, but do not go far. Pray for me." The flies vanished, but Pharaoh's heart turned hard again. Then disease struck the livestock of Egypt. Horses, camels, cattle, sheep collapsed and died. Yet not one animal of Israel fell. Still Pharaoh refused. Then painful boils broke out on man and beast. Egyptians groaned in agony, their skin blistered, their flesh burning. Even the magicians could not stand before Moses, their bodies covered in sores. But Pharaoh's heart was like iron. Then hail crashed down from the skies, thunder rolling, lightning flashing. Fire ran along the ground, hailstones shattered trees, stripped the fields bare, killed man and beast left outside. Pharaoh cried out, "I have sinned. Pray to the Lord, for I cannot endure this thunder and hail." Moses lifted his hands. The storm ceased. Pharaoh hardened his heart once more. Then came locusts, swarming like a living tide, devouring every green thing that remained. They darkened the land, filled every house, devoured every crop. Pharaoh pleaded again, "Forgive my sin once more and pray for me." Moses prayed. A strong wind swept the locusts into the sea, and Pharaoh turned hard again. Then came darkness. Thick, heavy, smothering darkness that could be felt. For 3 days no one moved. No one saw another. Yet in the homes of Israel there was light. Plague after plague, strike after strike, Egypt reeled, and yet Pharaoh's heart would not bend. At last God said to Moses, "I will bring one more plague on Pharaoh and on Egypt. After that he will let you go. About midnight I will pass through Egypt, and every firstborn shall die. From the firstborn of Pharaoh on the throne to the firstborn of the slave girl, even the firstborn of the cattle. There shall be a cry in Egypt such as has never been heard before, and never will be again. But among the Israelites, not even a dog shall bark. Then you will know that the Lord makes a distinction between Egypt and Israel." God gave his people instructions. Each household was to take a lamb, pure and without blemish. At twilight they were to slaughter it. They were to take its blood and paint it on the doorposts and lintels of their houses. They were to roast the lamb, eat it with unleavened bread and bitter herbs. They were to eat in haste, sandals on their feet, staffs in their hands, ready to leave. For that night the Lord would pass through Egypt, and when he saw the blood on the door, he would pass over that house. But where there was no blood, judgment would fall. Can you imagine the silence in the land that night? Families gathered inside, whispering prayers, painting blood with trembling hands. The smell of roasted lamb filled the air, bitter herbs on the tongue, unleavened bread baked quickly. Children clutched their mothers, fathers gripped their staffs. Outside, the streets were still, waiting. Hearts pounded. Midnight was coming. That night, the air was heavy and tense, as if the world itself was holding its breath. We huddled in our homes, sandals on our feet, staffs in our hands, the roasted lamb still warm over the fire, the smell of bitter herbs sharp in our noses. Blood glistened on our door frames, dark and sticky, a sign of life, of protection. The children whispered, pressed against their mothers, "Will it be enough?" Fathers stood tall, hands tight around their staffs, eyes scanning the shadows. And then, at the stroke of midnight, the silence shattered. A cry rose in Egypt, first one, then many, high-piercing, echoing across the land. From Pharaoh's palace to the lowliest hut, the firstborn were struck down. Pharaoh's heir fell dead, the firstborn of the slave girl, even the cattle. The air filled with the sound of grief, a wail unlike any other, the land trembling with sorrow. But inside our houses, there was only silence and relief, for the Lord had passed over us when he saw the blood. At once messengers came running from the palace. Pharaoh says, "Up, leave my people, take your flocks, your herds, and go. Worship the Lord as you have asked." We looked at one another, disbelief and hope clashing in our hearts. Could it be true? After generations of suffering, after years of chains and whips, could freedom really come at last? There was no time to wait. We grabbed our belongings, wrapped the unleavened dough quickly in cloths, packed what we could carry, and loaded the donkeys and flocks. The Egyptians themselves pressed gifts into our hands. Silver, gold, fine clothing, begging us to leave quickly. "Go," they shouted. "Go before the Lord destroys us as well." Imagine the scene, the night alive with motion. The torchlight flickering against the dust, the bleating of sheep, the creaking of carts. The murmur of thousands of people moving together in one great tide. Children were lifted onto shoulders, elders supported by strong arms. Neighbors called to one another, voices tense but urgent. "Hurry, the time has come." Step after step. We moved away from the land of our oppression, leaving behind the cries, the whips, the walls of slavery. The desert air was crisp, the stars above stretched endlessly, and yet fear pressed down on every heart. But Pharaoh's heart, even in grief, was not softened. When dawn broke and the realization hit him that the Israelites had fled, rage twisted his face. "What have we done?" he shouted. "We have lost their labor, and their insolence mocks us." His generals nodded grimly, their eyes cold. Pharaoh's command was sudden and fierce. "Harness the chariots. Assemble the army. Ride. Pursue them. Bring them back." The ground shook as chariots thundered, 600 of them, each with chosen men. Their horses snorting hooves, striking sparks from the stone. Dust rose behind them like a black cloud, and a roar of shouting filled the desert. We had no idea what awaited us. We traveled through the night, driven by fear, by hope, by the promise of God, and came at last to the edge of the Red Sea. Before us stretched water, endless and impossible. Mountains rose sharply on either side, hemming us in, trapping us, and then we saw them. The dust cloud of Pharaoh's army, the flash of bronze and steel, the roar of horses and men growing louder by the second. Panic spread like wildfire. Mothers clutched children, fathers grabbed staffs, the young men drew swords that were barely their own. We were trapped between the sea and an army of death. Voices rose in fear and anger. Moses, you have brought us into the desert to die. Were there no graves in Egypt that you've brought us here to perish? We told you to leave us alone. Better to serve the Egyptians than to die in this wilderness. The cries were sharp, accusing, desperate. My heart pounded, my own breath quickened. I lifted my staff, gripping it tightly, my knuckles white. Do not be afraid, I shouted. No, stand firm, and you will see the deliverance the Lord will bring you today. The Egyptians you see now, you will never see again. The Lord will fight for you. You need only be still. Can you imagine the tension? The wind stung our faces with dust. The horses of Pharaoh's army snorted like beasts of fire, their wheels grinding against the rocks. The sun blazed overhead, turning the sand to glass. Children screamed, mothers wept, the smell of fear mixed with sweat and dust and the salt of tears. And yet we were told to stand still. It's impossible, unimaginable, terrifying stillness. Then God spoke again through Moses. Lift your staff over the sea, stretch out your hand over the waters, and divide them. The people shall go through the sea on dry ground. My arms trembled as I obeyed. The weight of hope, of destiny, of the eyes of thousands upon me. And the waters, what did I see? They began to move, pushed back by a power beyond comprehension. Waves rose on either side, walls of water, trembling, shimmering in the sun. The seabed appeared, dry and firm, the water like to cliffs guarding our path. The people stared, mouths open, wide-eyed. Could it be true? Could we actually walk through the sea? The army behind us roared. Pharaoh's generals spurred their chariots, screaming orders. They were close now. The dust of their pursuit thickened the air. Behind us there was no escape, and before us the parted waters invited us in, trembling with energy. One by one the people stepped onto the seabed. Horses, donkeys, men, women, children all, moving carefully, eyes wide with awe, hands raised in trembling worship or clutching the hands of loved ones. The water held a miracle, a wall of firelight and waves on either side, and Pharaoh. He would not give up. His pride would not allow defeat. He mounted his chariot, flanked by his strongest men. He thundered into the gap, the wheels striking sparks, the horses screaming, the army following him blindly. The walls of water quivered, as if the sea itself waited with bated breath. And then, with a sweep of my hand, a word from the Lord, the waters crashed down, returning with a roar, burying chariots, men, horses, everything under waves that no man could hold. Screams echoed, then silence. The sea, once parted, returned to its natural state. The ground was firm, dry, and our people stood trembling but alive on the far side. We watched, mouths open, hearts pounding, as the prideful army of Egypt was swallowed completely. Not one remained. Not a single soldier, not a chariot, not a horse. The Lord had fought for us. The miracle was complete. And in that moment, the fear turned to joy, the panic to relief. The chains of generations fell away, leaving us stunned and breathless. Then the people lifted their voices. Women and men, young and old, together, sang in awe and thanksgiving. The Lord is my strength and my song. He has become my salvation. He is my God, and I will praise him. The Lord is mighty. The Lord is victorious. The sound rose, echoing over the waters, over the mountains, carried across the wilderness. For the first time, we were free, truly free. The power of God evident in every heartbeat, in every breath, in every tear that fell for joy rather than pain. And yet as we stood there, wet, tired, trembling, looking back at the sea that had destroyed Pharaoh's pride, we knew the journey had only begun. The wilderness awaited, full of dangers we could not yet see. But in that moment nothing could touch us. Nothing could shake the awe and the relief. The Lord had delivered his people. The impossible had been done, and the cry of freedom rose higher than any fear. The roar of the sea was deafening, crashing against the shores, salt spraying into our faces. The air trembled with the memory of what had just happened, the most powerful army on earth, swallowed in an instant by the waters we had only moments ago feared would swallow us. I gripped my staff tightly, the wood rough and solid in my hands, and looked around at the people. Men, women, and children stared in awe, some with tears streaming down their faces, some mouths hanging open in disbelief. They had seen death at the gates of the sea, and now they saw life preserved in the midst of ruin. My chest heaved with relief and exhaustion, but I could not let myself rest. There was still the wilderness ahead, and the fear in their eyes reminded me that the battle was not yet over. I called the people together, raising my voice above the lapping of the waves. I could see Miriam, my sister, standing near the front of the crowd, her tambourine raised high. Her face was radiant with joy, her eyes glimmering with tears, and her voice rang out clear and commanding. Sing to the Lord, for he has triumphed gloriously. The horse and rider he has hurled into the sea. The people joined her, and together we sang, a wave of sound that rolled across the shore, echoing off the water still trembling in the distance. Feet stamped, hands clapped, voices rose higher and higher until the desert itself seemed to vibrate with the sound of praise. Children laughed, dancing with their parents, the joy of freedom so overwhelming it could scarcely be contained. Even as the song echoed, I knew we could not linger. The wilderness stretched before us, vast and uncharted. The sun blazed overhead, scorching the sand beneath our feet, and the wind carried a dry heat that would test our endurance. Water would be scarce, food would be uncertain. The journey ahead was unknown, and yet, for the first time, the people were free. Their chains were gone, their oppressors defeated, their path illuminated by the hand of God himself. I moved among them, comforting those who trembled, encouraging the weary, helping the young and the old, step carefully onto the sand. Every face I saw was etched with awe, relief, and a dawning understanding of what had been accomplished. The first night after crossing the sea, we camped near the edge of the wilderness. Fires were lit, flickering in the growing darkness, and the people sat close to one another, exhausted, grateful, but unable to sleep. Children's breathing came in uneven gasps, and mothers hummed lullabies to soothe their fears. I walked among the tents, watching, listening, making sure every family was safe. I could feel the weight of responsibility pressing on me once more their lives were in my hands. But their hearts and spirits belonged to God. Morning came with a harsh light, and the wilderness revealed itself in all its starkness. Endless sand, jagged rocks, and sparse vegetation stretched as far as the eye could see. But above us, the pillar of cloud rose again, tall and commanding, a visible sign of the Lord's presence. Its shadow moved slowly over the sand, guiding our steps. The people followed in silence, the awe of the previous day settling into a sober recognition that the journey was far from over. The songs of praise still lingered in the air, soft echoes of triumph, but there was also a tension, a quiet readiness. As the reality of the desert began to sink in, as we traveled, the people looked to me for guidance, their eyes filled with both hope and fear. The young men asked questions about what lay ahead. The elders watched the pillar of cloud for direction, and the women kept the children close, whispering prayers and reassurances. I spoke to them, telling them to follow the Lord, to trust his hand, to walk as he commanded. Every step through the sand was careful and deliberate, every breath taken under the sun's fierce heat, yet each step was also a testimony to what we had survived. The wilderness would challenge us, but we had seen a power greater than Pharaoh's armies, greater than fear itself. By evening, we found water, bitter at first, then made sweet by God's command. The people drank deeply, and their faces shone with relief. Then came food, manna that appeared in the morning, quail in the evening, gifts from heaven itself. Every miracle reminded the people and me that we were not alone. The Lord had delivered us through impossible odds, and he would continue to guide us. That night, as the fires burned low and the stars stretched across the sky, we rested. I watched the people sleep, their faces calm for the first time in generations, and I felt a deep sense of peace. The sea was behind us, a monument to God's power and protection. The wilderness lay ahead, uncertain and testing, but the people were alive, free, and guided by a God who would not fail them. The song we had begun at the sea continued softly among the tents. A murmur of praise, of joy, of gratitude, a sound that would grow louder as we learned to trust in every step of our journey. And in that moment, I felt the weight of history pressing upon me. We had left Egypt forever, we had witnessed the destruction of an empire, and we had tasted freedom for the first time. The path forward was uncharted, the desert vast and merciless. But the Lord's presence was undeniable, a shield around us, a guide before us, a promise that would never be broken. And as I looked at the people at their tired, dusty faces, at their hands clutching each other, at the light of hope beginning to shine in their eyes, I knew that we were not just survivors. We were a people reborn, a nation forged in the fire of bondage and the waters of deliverance. People whose story had only just begun. The desert had become both our crucible and our home yet. It was merciless. Endless dunes stretched into eternity, each rise of sand a trial, each gust of wind a whip across our faces. Dust seared our eyes and clung to our tongues, turning every breath into a struggle. Each dawn the sun rose without pity, scorching our skin, cracking our lips, and testing the endurance of every man, woman, and child. When the first pale light touched the dune tops, I watched the people gather, faces tight with resolve, eyes sharp with caution, hands gripping staffs and waterskins. They had grown stronger with the years, forged by hunger, thirst, and endless wandering. Yet each step still carried danger. Each step demanded vigilance. Each day pressed us to prove survival, faith, and courage. It was on one of these mornings, the sun barely breaking, when a cry ripped through the camp. Moses, voices wailed, ragged with desperation. We have nothing to eat, nothing to drink. We will die here. Panic surged like wildfire. Fathers snatched up their children, mothers screamed, elders clutched their staffs with trembling hands. Some dropped to their knees, sobbing openly, unable to imagine another day of torment. I searched the sea of terrified faces, thousands of souls hanging upon beyond, felt the crushing weight of every life. Their fear pierced me, but I knew faith must rise higher than despair. I lifted my staff, closed my eyes, and cried out to God. Lord, Provide for your people. Show them mercy as you have before. The desert hushed. Even the wind seemed to listen. By dawn the next day, the sand glimmered strangely, scattered with tiny white flakes, soft as frost, yet warm beneath the sun. The people stared, astonished. What is this? One man whispered, tasting it carefully. Manna, I answered, awe trembling in my voice. Bread from heaven. Take only enough for today, for tomorrow it will return. Laughter broke out as children gathered it in their hands. Mothers pressed it to their children's lips. Even the elders wept with gratitude. Hunger, that shadow of despair, had been driven back by the mercy of God. But manna alone did not silence the desert's cruelty. The sun beat down, blistering skin, splitting lips, and thirst gnawed at the people's strength. One day a woman cried out, and soon the whole camp echoed her terror. There is no water, we are dying. Panic rose like a storm wind clutching jars, women clutching children, people shouting, running, breaking under fear. I raised my voice above the chaos. Silence. The Lord will provide. I ran to a rock, worn smooth by centuries, and lifted my staff. God's command thundered within me. Strike the rock. Struck once, then again. A torrent burst forth, water spilling like a river from dead stone. Shouts filled the air, children splashing, mothers filling jars, men drinking deeply, tears mingling with water. The desert's grip had been broken once more, though everyone knew its threats were never far behind. Even as we drank, a distant hum reached us, the pounding of hooves. Dark figures cut across the horizon, Amalekites, swift and merciless, their war cries carried by the wind. Terror swept the camp. Mothers clutched children, men seized weapons, chaos churned like a storm. I climbed the hilltop, staff raised high, and cried aloud, my prayer echoing across the sands. Lord, fight for your people. Protect us from destruction. The people hesitated, torn between fear and hope, until I lifted my arms higher. A wave of courage surged through them. Men formed ranks, women drew children close, and together they braced for the charge. The battle was brutal. Sand filled our mouths, the Amalekites' cries pierced the air, weapons clashed in a frenzy of survival. Yet I felt God's strength steadying us, flowing through my hands, through the people. I shouted commands, directing men to hold the flanks, guiding the women and children to safety, urging the young to stand firm. By sundown the Amalekites broke, their courage shattered by a power they could not fathom. We stood bloodied, exhausted, yet victorious, not by strength alone, but by divine hand. Still, the desert demanded more. Every day brought new trials, scavenging for food, rationing water, tending wounds, fortifying the camp. Arguments flared. Why should I carry this? Who drinks first? Anger echoed through the dunes. I walked among them, settling disputes, reminding them that survival required obedience, trust, and unity. Each rebellion tested us. Each lesson shaped us. Night brought no peace. Wolves howled in the distance, shifting sands whispered threats, and the cold bit into weary bones. Around the fires, children shivered, mothers held them close, elders prayed in hushed tones. I moved among them, listening to their fears and hopes, their whispers of Egypt's chains, their memories of miracles past. The wilderness pressed them without rest, teaching endurance through fear, courage through uncertainty. Seasons passed, and the people grew sharper, stronger, disciplined. Manna fell daily, quail descended from the skies, streams burst from hidden stone. Yet each provision carried new perils, ravines waiting to swallow, storms rising without warning, predators lurking in silence, hostile tribes watching from the shadows. A sudden sandstorm once tore through camp, ripping tents, stinging faces, drowning the camp in terror. I shouted above the roar, leading them to safety, reminding them again, courage and faith were their shelter. Each trial tempered them like steel in the forge. I watched as young men mastered vigilance, moving swiftly across dunes, anticipating ambushes, shielding the weak. Women organized the camp with wisdom, distributing water, rationing food, teaching children survival. Elders, once frail, now carried authority, guiding with wisdom, teaching covenant truths. The wilderness had shaped us into a people, hardened, united, resolute. And then at last, the horizon changed. Green shimmered beyond the sands. My heart thundered as hills, alive with trees and rivers, rose before us. The camp halted as one, mouths agape, tears streaming freely. Some fell to their knees, some lifted their arms skyward, voices breaking in awe. The desert's agony faded in the brilliance of what lay ahead. The promised land, no longer a vision, but living, fertile, real. Children laughed. Men pressed forward with caution and wonder. Women wept openly, embracing their families. Every battle, every sleepless night, every step of agony had led here. I sank to my knees, pressing my staff into the sand, eyes lifted to heaven. Lord, I whispered, you have led us, you have sustained us, you have not abandoned us. Guide us now, as you always have, into the land you promised. The people surged forward, no longer merely survivors, but a nation tempered in fire, forged in faith, bound in unity. Young men ran toward the hills, Women formed groups to explore water. Children danced in joy. Every heartbeat testified to God's faithfulness, every breath to the miracles that had carried us from bondage to freedom. And there beneath the boundless sky, with green hills rising in the distance, the people rested. The desert had tested us, transformed us, and prepared us. Now we stood ready not just to enter the promised land, but to build, to grow, and to honor the God who had carried us every step of the way.